In the United States, every year, roughly 1.2 million cats and dogs are euthanized. You may ask, how does this happen and why does this occur? Well, my name is Wyatt, and today we're going to discuss a variety of options and what we can do to help bring that number down. I have many years of experience with working with fostering and adopting cats, dogs, horses, fish, reptiles, and birds. First, let's get into the topics that we're going to discuss today. First, we're going to discuss the negative effects of overbreeding and why and how it occurs. Secondly, let's get into the alternatives to buying pets from traditional means such as pet stores or breeders. Last, we're going to talk about the future of pet ownership and what these changes will do and how they will impact that number 1.2 million euthanizations. First, let's get into the negative effects of overbreeding. Overbreeding comes as a result of reckless consumer trends and the breeders oftentimes trying to meet these trends. One example of this is from the early 2000s, in which breeders tried to meet the demand of consumers for 100 Dalmatians. This came as a result of the movie 101 Dalmatians. Gerlanda in 2014 in her study found that movies had a significant impact on the behavior of breeders and consumers, with oftentimes breeders increasing their supply of the animal to meet the new demand. This change could last anywhere from a matter of months to years, and oftentimes resulted in an excess of a certain animal as a result once the consumer no longer had interest. One of the other negative effects of overbreeding is the conditions that these animals are put in. Oftentimes, these animals are extremely lucrative for the breeders. This results sometimes in breeders putting money over the actual health of the animals. Animals are sometimes neglected and put into small pens and oftentimes not given proper medical care, as they are only held on to for a few weeks or even months, and oftentimes sold right after to their owners. Here you can see one example of that, where there's a variety of dogs put into a small pen, likely because the cost of having a large open field, which the dogs need, is too expensive. Second, let's get into the many alternatives opposed to buying from traditional means and what we can do in educating the consumer along with passing regulations to ensure that animals like this are no longer treated in such ways. First, let's get into the education of the consumer. We need to change the minds of the buyers of these animals. We can't treat animals as if they're fashion accessories, and we can't treat them like technology where we mass produce them, and if we have excess it just sits in a warehouse. That results in the euthanization of hundreds of thousands of animals every year, and that cannot happen anymore. Oftentimes, adopting a pet is not just more affordable, it's also more humane. Adoption of a pet from a kill shelter means that you are oftentimes saving that pet's life. Not only that, but adopting a pet is oftentimes more affordable. Pets usually are vaccinated, spayed or neutered, and have been chipped. This is much more convenient, also much more affordable for the average person, opposed to buying a pet from a breeder where oftentimes you have to go get the pet vaccinated or neutered yourself. Oftentimes, adopting is also much cheaper in terms of just upright cost. Adopting a pet is usually only $10, $20, $30. Some shelters maybe $100. When you are buying a new pet from a breeder, that price can range from anywhere from a few $100s up to thousands and even tens of thousands of dollars for some designer breeds. Treating these animals like designer brands and luxury clothing is just not sustainable. Not only is it resulting in the euthanization of thousands of pets, but also it's resulting in lots of shelters that are meant to take care of these animals being overflown, and also resulting in more euthanization. I think that educating the consumer will help change this. We need to get it into the consumer's mind that you should be educated about that breed before you purchase it and know what will happen and how big it will get, what its requirements and needs are. One example of not following that trend is from a recent study in 2020 by Jonas from History.com, in which she looked into how Burmese pythons got into the Everglades. This likely came as a result of lack of consumer education in which many pet owners bought Burmese pythons, not realizing how large they grow, and as they increase in size, the demand for a larger tank and larger food grew with it. This resulted in a lot of pet owners oftentimes flushing their Burmese pythons or simply releasing them into the wild, where we now have invasive species in Florida as a result of the Burmese python. Second, let's get into government regulation, what that could do to help change the cruelty and cruel treatment of animals. Government regulation and inspection of breeding facilities, along with increasing the requirements for breeding a breeder, could particularly impact the quality of life for many of these animals. Having regular inspections of these facilities and possibly making the requirements for breeding these animals stricter so that we don't have an oversupply could be a much more humane, could result in better humane treatment towards these animals. Like I said, we can't have an excess. We can't simply store these in a factory. Third, let's get into the future of pet ownership if we manage to achieve our goals by educating consumers, passing government regulation, and trying to stop these reckless trends. The future of pet ownership could drastically change if we got it into the mind of the consumer that they should adopt or try and go to rescue shelters or even buy pets secondhand. I know from personal experience that when I purchased my ball python that there was 1 million listings for ball pythons all over the internet. That simply comes as a result of people just losing interest in their pets. I would have much rather bought a pet for secondhand rather than giving money to a breeder who's recklessly breeding hundreds of thousands of these things. And that's what I did. I think the future of pet ownership will change if we can get pet owners to adopt. We can help bring down that number, 1.2 million euthanized, down to 0 if we can get people to stop giving money to breeders and take away that incentive for breeders to overbreed and make the field just less lucrative. Secondly, I think education will also help stop the abandonment of many pets and help empty shelters. By educating consumers on the requirements for their pets, will ensure that they know what they're getting into before they purchase that pet. Education also ensures that the consumers are probably less likely to buy a pet out of just a rash decision or feeling. And putting restrictions on pet breeding could also help with government regulations and such. By ensuring that these facilities are well regulated and ensuring that they're not overbreeding, we can also just help bring that number down. Well, I hope that was educational for today and I can help change your mind on why you should probably adopt opposed to buying a pet from traditional means such as a pet store or breeder. I think adoption is a great option and a much better option when compared to buying from a pet store, considering the inhumane conditions that many pets are put through. Well, we're just going to briefly go over why adoption is just a better option before I let you go. First, I think adoption is just a much better option because you're ensuring that you're saving a life and you're building a bond with that pet. Pets that are oftentimes put into shelters don't escape. They're oftentimes so full that they have to euthanize them to make more room. That's just one of the dangers of overbreeding. Back to my second point, I think adoption is just an all-around more affordable option, and also, once again, you're building that bond with that animal and ensuring that it doesn't get euthanized. Last, let's return to the final point, the future of pet ownership. I think that if we educate the consumer, along with passing government regulations to more strictly control breeders, that the conditions of these animals will improve and they will be treated more humanely, along with help bringing down that number of euthanized pets every year. Well, I hope that was all for you guys, and I hope you learned a lot, and I would like you guys to take that home today and think about your future pet decisions in purchasing. Thank you very much.